Hello. Um, just thought I'd have a little discussion on what kind of things we can do to improve CV, our CVs, and any interview tips and stuff. Um, I'm actually coming here to asking anyone for their advice. I don't really have um, much advice to give myself. Um, I'm just sort of putting the question out there, just seeing if there's any ideas or any things that people have thought on improving their CV, any sort of procedures or any sort of method that people have used for applying for jobs. Just a little bit of background. I got made redundant from a software development role, due to the whole COVID thing, and myself, like many others in the country now, have been made redundant. So I'm just wondering if anyone's got any tips on CVs and any things like that. Feel free to join in, either leave some messages in the chat or share your screen. Any advice, any anecdotes, any experiences are welcome. So yeah, feel free to speak up. So there's a quiet. I think there's 4 people here. I'm not sure. Does anyone have any thoughts or any ideas about how some companies are using ATS scanners, I believe, that scan the CVs, resumes before applying? Does anyone have any thoughts about that or any experiences using those systems? No. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure what to say. Maybe some people will be joining later. I'm not sure. Hi, Connie. Um, okay, good question. Okay, informatics. Okay, I'm not too myself. I have a software development and web development background. I'm not sure. I think there's some parallels to be drawn. So I think with um, computing and programming and perhaps informatics, nowadays I think certificates and degrees they're still quite important, but they're not necessary at all. Um, I have programmed and worked with other developers that know that don't have any formal qualifications that are actually quite good. Um, so I think you're on the good a good idea of reading tutorials, looking at seeing what other people have done to prepare. So I would go and reach out to people perhaps in the industry that you're looking for, whether it's informatics or I'm not sure would that be the same as data science. I know there are a lot of tutorials out there, practical based ones with programming. I think I was in a similar situation to you at one point, and I, like yourself, started looking at tutorials, getting some practice, and just work through like pet projects and things like that. Okay, you're doing parts. I'd like to know how I can improve the skills. Right, yeah, great, great question. My approach would be to have perhaps a pet project or something, like an idea that you want to do. You can look at other tutorials and perhaps adapt them to include perhaps some of your interests, your own personal interests. What you could do going forwards is, say you have a subject or a hobby that you like, for example, and for example, I don't know, it could be some sort of inventory system or something that records the number of something, and perhaps you want to see if you want to be able to obtain any trends or see some analysis from that. I would look at some of these sample projects and maybe even do like a sort of a test project or something just to play about with at home, using your own ideas and things. And then what would happen then is that you'd work through the project, and then the aim being that you could mention it into your CV. I would definitely look at getting a GitHub account if you don't have one, and uploading any code that you practice with onto GitHub. This is something then you can mention in your CV and then in your interviews when you go to talk with prospective employers. You can show them the code directly. That's one of the things you could do. Yeah, so I hope that answers that question. If anyone else has any ideas or input, feel free to add them to the chat. Yeah, you're welcome. Very welcome. Again, codebar is a great resource when I was starting out, to find a mentor that knows your area a little bit well. Send a message to one of the admins, ask them to be paired up, or go to one of the coding sessions. It's a great head start. That's one of the things codebar is really good for. Yep. Hello, Alex.
So, is this the CV interviewing tips? Or?
Yeah. So it's actually my first unconference, and I was actually coming here for asking for help, but I think I've been put. I've been sort of maybe.
I have a thing. So I've recently rewritten my CV, and I've been in the same company for almost 5 years now, so it's pretty out of date and kind of in a different style that I think I would have done if I created from scratch. And one thing I came across, which I'll dig the link for, that I thought was very useful was to phrase the things you've done as like achievements as opposed to description, and specifically trying to make things very number based, like oh, I've done 5 of these things, and I've worked in a team of 4 people or whatever. So like saying numbers makes things more specific, and it kind of helps people, I guess, work out what you actually did there that was of value that you want to talk about. Because most people just describe either their team or the product they worked on for the company, and those are not very interesting things for anyone looking to know more about you. It's more important to know what you did in the company that you thought was valuable, because you're probably just going to highlight things that you think are worth talking about. So I thought that was very interesting. I'm going to share the link. There are 2 links. One is a blog post, and that's more recent. That's from this year, and it links to one that I think is from 2011 or something. But that one is an interesting one where it shows an example of what if I think like an American football player did their CV like we do CVs, or using this other technique, and the difference is quite striking, because they're like, when you see the first one, it's like, oh, this is describing any job, like, oh yeah, run with the ball. It was like super boring, and the second is like, oh yeah, won this title or whatever, or run this many miles or something like that. So
right.
it's very interesting in terms of like doing CVs, and I've in the job I'm at right now, I do a lot of interviewing of people and reading CVs and stuff.
Okay.
And the amount of terrible CVs that come across are like it's striking. So I think if it looks like you put some thought into your CV, like you're already ahead of a lot of people. So definitely recommend.
Okay.
So I'm thinking about that. So I'm going to share in the chat the tube.
All right. Yeah. Jacqueline, I see it.
Yeah, Jacob Kaplan is the guy who created Django. So if you used Python before,
oh right, okay, I've heard of Django,
yeah,
and Python. I see. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, let's bookmark that. Read that. Maybe I'm gonna ask. Do you know anything about, or I hear talk about a lot of companies they use ATS scanners or something? Is that a common thing in tech companies, or what's your thoughts on that?
I've seen companies that try to use that to reduce the amount of work you have to do. So I think the practices I've seen in terms of like CV sifting is either you give it to recruiters that are not necessarily technical, and then I guess people have the fear that they're not going to be able to identify whether some experience is relevant to the job that people are applying to. My company, what we do is we have an engineer who is responsible for doing the sifting, and sometimes we rotate it over so that it doesn't have to be the same person every time. And I think that really helps, because you offload the recruiters to do other things, like the HR people that are talking to candidates and booking interviews and those kind of things.
Right.
And you normally get a better, sift, because they understand more about the job, they understand more about what languages and frameworks people have on their CVs that might be relevant, or their experience. And then there's what you described, which is to just use a kind of like an automatic way of trying to figure out if the CV is good or not. Is that what you're talking about? Or
yeah, I think so. Yeah. ATS.
yeah,
Some keyword scanning or something, or I don't know.
Yeah, so they just like you feed the CV and out comes like a grade 50 or whatever, I think. And it just says how good a fit that person would be. And then I personally think that's a very poor way of judging CV.
It's quite lazy, I think, in my opinion.
If you got to the point that you're getting billions of CVs to a company, I think it's a very unfair way. And I guess we're having a discussion in the other session about diversity. That is probably the worst way of getting diverse candidates, is by using a machine to decide, which will get in, because algorithms have been proven to be biased in a lot of times. So If the people building that algorithm are not a diverse group themselves, the likelihood of them building something that's going to just steer towards whatever they are or the group they belong to, it's very high. So I would probably steer away from those techniques where possible. Another thing I think is very interesting is like what we do in our company is we strip out the name of the candidate from the CV before he goes to the person doing the sifting, because that can bring some bias as well. You can even go further, I guess, and remove more information. So like if there's any information on where the person's from or those kind of things that could add to the bias, I think removing that is a good idea, because then people they read the CV without those kind of extra layers of things that can get in the way of them deciding whether that's a good or not candidate for the job. So
okay.
So these are interesting.
Okay, thanks. I think Chris just sent a link on the chat about job scan. Okay, that looks like a useful tool.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Okay, that's great. All right. Yes, you got the pet dance, the football team analogy.
If you're, I would say, I think this is most prevalent with probably
professional resume.
Oh, sorry, did I interrupted you? Dafin, sorry. But probably bigger companies, like where the volume is like really intense. But if you're worried that where you're applying, it's worth using one of these tools, and you just paste in the job description and you upload your like resume, and then it matches and then tells you like, oh, you're missing like this and this and this keyword. I would say like one thing that kind of peeves me about this a little bit is that, it will say like, oh, you're missing, like, it will tell you exactly like, I don't know, you're missing like React experience. But I'm like, well, yes, but I have very, very comparable experience in like Vue, which like, so, it wouldn't be for me an issue probably to then like, so it doesn't really do that. And that's a problem with obviously these algorithmic tools, is that they don't scan for like compare. Yeah, it's like it's either like black and white perfect match or nothing else, and like that is what's so unfair, because guess what, like with my very comparable experience in this other tool, which is like extremely similar to this tool, I would probably be very competent at this job. But if you're like scanning me out at this stage, or it's just not a perfect keyword match, well, I can't even prove that I would probably be really good at this thing. So I would say you don't know. It's annoying. Probably only bigger companies do it, where like the volume is just really overwhelming and they have to do something about it. But if it's concerned to you, like use one of these tools, try to get as many matches as you can, or as good a, but I wouldn't overthink it. Like don't put down things basically that are you don't know or untrue about yourself just to please the algorithm, right? Like but yeah, if it is a concern, and just wanted to jump into kind of say it's worth checking. Don't overdo it, and definitely don't like make up things to kind of please the ASC basically. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thanks. Yeah, some good advice there.
Yeah.
Also, actually, another question I was thinking of. I don't know. It's probably old hat now. What's the opinion on CVs that look very snazzy with bar charts and columns and that versus something Times New Roman paragraphs, bullet points? What's your guys' thoughts on these kinds of things?
Alex, do you want to go ahead?
Alex, I'll
wait for you. But I think I see the point that people are trying to make, which is like maybe want to stand out for some reasons. Like I sometimes pay attention to a few things on CVs, like if it's like the formatting is completely off, like there's one sentence in one font and one sentence in another, and then at some point they say their skills are their strength is like attention to detail, and I'm like, come on,
no, yeah.
There's a lot. I think there's a lot that the formatting says about a person. I think you tend to value what you do yourself. So like I try not to prefer CVs that look like mine, like oh, this is what I would do, and try to remove that other element of bias. So if someone comes with a super snazzy CV, which mine's not, I just think, oh, they put some effort into it, or they used the right template. At least they went out and looked for a template that looks nice, and they used that. I pay more attention to other things, like if your CV is like too long, I think for me that loses a few points, because you probably want to just, I guess you have to understand how people read CVs, and it's basically they're going to read the first page, and then not going to read it. They're going to scan the first page.
Scan it.
They will scan the second page very quickly. If there are more pages, they'll just do like, oh, so many pages. And they might go to the last page to see when you started working, if they worried about your number of years of experience. So I think if you can build a CV that helps people get information quicker. So if there's some formatting that you can do that will be like, okay, stayed in this place for this many. If this is what you look for, like how many years have you stayed in this company? Have you jumped around from company to company? Have you done like 6 months in each company? If you have done that and you were like contracting, you should write on your CV that you're contracting, because then people won't ask other questions about it. If you have a gap, people say, like, I'm unsure about gaps, but people say that you should always say what the gap was for, and maybe just because people might ask, like if you have maybe a 2-year gap on your CV, you can say, oh, I've taken a gap for personal reasons, and at least people are not going to ask, and not going to be asking, oh, I wonder what happened there. Were they unemployed? People might still ask that, I guess. But what I think is to try to preempt any thoughts that the person reading your CV might have. It's also a good tip. And just understanding that they won't take more than 1 minute reading a CV most of the times, especially if they're sitting. If they're interviewing you, then maybe they'll take a bit more time to prepare for, like, asking you more questions about your experience or things like that. But.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. I just
wanted to add something exactly on your last point, Alex, about people giving maximum a minute. I mean, say 20 seconds. Honestly, they'll be skimming through the thing. So although it's tempting to add in lots of beautiful things, and I'm a former designer myself, it's very tempting to make it look beautiful, but really just have to think about someone skimming down it. So, I mean, bullet points, really. And I had some really good advice when I was putting together my first developer, to get my first developer job as a career change. I'd seen all these like fancy CV templates, where people sort of have, they try and gauge, like, JavaScript 4 out of 5, CSS 3 out of 5. No. And also some really good advice I had. I was like, oh, but shouldn't I like list my skills, which were very limited. It was sort of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, stop. And the guy that was advising me was like, no, because it will be a very short list at the moment. Good. You're much better, in your like summary at the beginning, explain what you can do and what you're interested in. In my section that I had on my CV about codebar, which was actually a separate section away from education, away from work history, I started my CV with a separate section about codebar, because that was going to be my only relevant experience, really, to date, in tech. So that in that space, I could describe what I'd learned and what I would, enjoyed or whatever. But yeah, it's not going to go well if you start trying to like list like the percentage of your skills, or this very short list of your skills when you're going for your first job, that is.
Unless maybe an exception to that could be if you are like maybe a UI or UX person, and that is part of it. But
yeah, I would say 100% no bar charts. They're meaningless. They don't mean anything. What is like 80% JavaScript? Like, oh, 80% of JavaScript. Like, no one knows 80% of JavaScript. I'm sorry.
Compared to what? Compared to who else?
Exactly.
Exactly.
If anything, they are like gonna hurt. Like people people who are more experienced or looking at your resume will know that this is made up, and like why are they making up these things? Like if anything, it's probably gonna hurt you than like be an asset. And in terms of like I would say like formatting, just make sure it's consistent, it's nice, like no typos. It's more important than like having snazzy like, you know, like whatever on it. Like as long as it looks good, things are easy to find, like education skills, you know, the kind of experience, the headlines are there, consistent formatting. It doesn't have, I don't think it has to be snazzy. Like even if you're a designer applying for a job, like it's like that part of like the application process is not like where you prove your skills. I mean, you do, but like in, you know, in a textual context, and then later you can like, will have some sort of test, like even a design test or like a coding. So as long as it's readable, it looks good, consistent formatting and no typos, again, like very, very, very important. Like I would, yeah, I think it's not worth like putting hours and hours into, and no bar charts, absolutely whatsoever not. I would say, yeah, but yeah, I just wanted to like underline the like just a nice, clear, consistent formatting, and I think you're good to go. Yeah, you don't really need more.
Okay. Well, thanks. Yeah, that's good
I'm
advice.
looking through. There's a question from Catherine who says, "Can you give any advice on solving HackerRank problems that come up in interviews?" And I don't know if it's referring to the ones you did before, because I think there's an automated HackerRank like test you can send out to candidates, or if it's like HackerRank like tests, like algorithmic things. Is that what you meant, Catherine? I don't know if you're still there.
I would say like my view on this, like, and I mean, I come from like, I'm talking from a position of privilege because I already have a job and I'm in the industry already. So if this is your very first job, there are like less things you can say no to. But I'm actually like going through a job search right now, and I saw this job posting and I was like, oh, okay, I could do this. This looks really good. And like the first thing, even before you talk to anyone at the company, was like, why don't you like solve these free like fun little programs? And I was like problems, sorry, words. Like right away, I'm like red flag. Like I'm not gonna start doing any sort of like exercise before I even talk to anyone at this company. Like it's why would I spend even just like an hour of my time doing these things if I don't know if this place is even like somewhere where I really want to work? Because like I haven't even talked to anyone, like and I haven't like gotten any answers to my questions, right? Like as like a potential candidate. So I would say for me, like if like right away you have to start solving problems and like there are challenges, and like to me that's a kind of a red flag, a big no. But I am at like a senior position. So obviously if you're junior, you might be tempted, and you have to, I think, like weigh up like how much of my time is this gonna take up? Like if I'm gonna spend 2 days like just doing this like preliminary, like filter before I even had the chance to like talk to a person at this company, like is that worth my time? Could have probably applied to like 4 other jobs in that time where like they treat you as an actual human being and not like, like a keyboard with like hands or extensions basically. But yeah, you have to kind of weigh up. And even then, like if I'm applying somewhere and like the technical challenge is like one of these like HackerRank that like again, like that puts me at unease, because I feel like it's either like a pair programming or like a take-home assignment. I'm much more comfortable with those than these like algorithmic like online like I don't like these kinds of tools at all. Like as I wouldn't use them for if I were looking for developers either. When I hired, I never used these things. They just feel so like you're hiring a human being, someone else to be on your team, someone you're gonna probably spend more time with this person than your own mother, right? Like, so I like to treat them as people and not just like, go away and do these like little like exercises on this like something that like I don't know, like to me they feel very like, the word I'm trying to find, sorry, like impersonal almost, like completely like, they're not very humane to me actually. So it's really hard, obviously, when it's your first job. Like you can't say no to most things. You don't have the options. So again, I would say like weigh up your time. Is it worth it? And in terms of like solving them, I guess like the only thing you can do is kind of like keep practicing, like go on some sort of like algorithmic practice thing and like just do as much of them as you can. So you kind of like learn how to do that. But yeah, it's for me, like personally, I really hate these kinds of tools. And when it's like, you know, like especially if it's before you even talk to someone, but even like as a technical challenge for like a proper job, I just feel like they're extremely impersonal and like it's just not a very good experience for the person who's looking. And I understand like right now it's completely like unprecedented times. I'm sorry I even said that, but yeah, like if you can avoid them at all costs, do. If not, then I would say the only way, like, how do I solve them? It's like just practice, practice, practice. If you find like a similar site where they have similar issue, like problems, like go do them. But I'm, for example, absolutely horrible at these kinds of things. And like, guess what? Like I somehow made it to senior in my career. So do they actually like filter for what you actually need on a job? Absolutely not. Like that's the issue, right? Like these are not the kind of skills you really need to succeed as a developer, but oh well. I mean, some of them obviously, like you need to know how to code, but that's just like, I would say maybe like 50% of what you're gonna actually be doing. So yeah, that's my perspective on that. Sorry, I probably went on a little bit too long.
Oh no, sure, yeah, it was great. If I can offer a slightly different perspective, I think a lot of companies are doing these kind of interviews because they don't know any better. Like that's what we do in the industry, and they you know, if it's a new company like a startup, they don't have a very mature process, so they end up just resorting to that because that's what we do in the industry. And you know, that's probably not the best way to assess, but that's one way people know how to assess. So I have a tip for people doing these kind of interviews, which is having been on the other side on a few companies, I know what people most of the times are looking for is not for you to know what exact algorithm to use. Like, oh, this can be solved with a whatever binary tree. Well, I don't know. I don't even know these names because I'm terrible at all these things as well. Like, so I think one tip I give people is that most of the times you don't need to learn these all these algorithms. You need to know things like lists and dictionaries and you know some very basic things. And I think the more important thing is for you to communicate what you're thinking during the interview. If it's like a live coding interview and I guess one that you do at home. Yeah, so like kind of think out loud as you're going through a problem. Like even if you don't know the answer, you'll be like, well, I think this would be pretty slow if I did it like this, or I'm gonna do this, and I think this is kind of like a naive approach, and I'm gonna start with the naive approach, and then after I'm done, I have another idea, and then you know go to a different route. And I think these kind of things is really what people like when candidates do. Like you're talking through the problem, like you're communicating with me. I can already see other skills other than you knowing this very specific algorithm that solves this problem in 2 lines or whatever. Or so I think we also have to understand like that the companies are not very good at interviewing, and developers are not very good at interviewing either. So you might be interviewed by a terrible interviewer who might be a great developer. And that person might not have a clue of what they're doing in terms of interviewing. So they're just following a script. They are going to test for the wrong things, and if you don't produce the right answer, you know they won't, you know, or the answer they were expecting, they won't kind of get, you know, they won't think that you're doing it right. So I think these are a lot of things to bear in mind. Like. A lot of the times, if you fail an interview as well, like it's probably not down to you. A lot of the times, the interviewer is very beginner in terms of that skill, and they won't be able to assess your skills very well or your potential, which is most of the times what you should be assessing in interviews. And then there's also what Chris said, which is just practice these kind of exercises, but I wouldn't go crazy on it. Like just do a little bit to kind of get you going, and find the companies that value the right skills and the communication more than these kind of crazy things. So I wouldn't be too off-put by the process, because I think, as I said before, the companies are in a very like early stage of their maturity on like having their processes laid out in a nice, inclusive way. So sometimes it's worth going to the interview and seeing what happens, especially if you're struggling to find other companies to apply for.
That's a good point, because interviewing is a skill that's probably not the skill we've been practicing as developers. So go to as many as you have time for, and then when the one that comes up that's the one that you really want, if it's not all of them, then you'll have practice at it, which means you'll come across better as well.
Some really good advice there. So I just noticed Paula's message. About juniors. I've also noticed as well. I'm in a position where I'm looking for jobs, and I've also found that junior roles now, they're expecting 3 to 4 years experience as well. Maybe it's just the roles that I've been looking at, but it's good to see other people are seeing the same similar things as well.
It's honestly, it's really hard to say like anything to that then. And I know this is like the worst advice. No one wants to hear this, but because it's not helpful. Like I understand that people need jobs, but like if you see that sort of thing out there, like it's almost, you don't want to go into that situation because it's so unrealistic what they are expecting of you. And like you can probably tell, like, you can, based on that, like that is the job posting, that you will probably be stressed, overworked, gonna struggle a lot. You're not gonna probably have any support. If they want, like a junior with like 3-4 years, like they're probably looking for someone to do a non-junior job for cheap or they themselves don't understand what a junior is. So you are just gonna really, really struggle in that role probably, and it's not gonna be good for you. And again, I completely understand this is 100% unhelpful, because I understand people also need jobs because they need to eat and like, have a roof over their heads. But basically there is no way, like if you already don't have a job, to be able, like no matter what you do on your own time by yourself, to get an experience of what it's like to be on the job. Like, you can do as many tutorials as you want, you can do every single challenge on HackerRank, and it's completely different to like learn by yourself and work on a team. So it's a catch-22, and it's really awful. I completely understand, but like literally the only thing I can say is that you probably actually don't really want to work for a company like that, because the only thing you can do is keep going and find that one job where the expectations are realistic and where you can actually get in without having done every single HackerRank challenge, where if there is some sort of like technical interview, you do it with a person, so you can work through, or do it on your own time, not like time challenges or whatever. So, and especially like right now, this is even like worse to hear, because like, the situation is just, but it is like, there is basically like, I don't think like by yourself there's anything you can do to make up the gap of like having to go for a junior role that requires 3-4 years of experience, because you can't get that kind of experience on your own. Like being in a job is completely different than like coding on your own. And I don't quite, unless like you start, maybe one of the things you could like demonstrate this kind of skill if you started, for example, like doing some like open source work, because that is a little bit more similar to how you would work on a team. But again, that is not everyone can do that. Like not everyone have time to. That's basically like if you already have a job, then you're trying to change tech careers into tech, and then now you have to do like a side hustle of like contributing to open source. Like you might not have the time, so that is not a viable kind of like road for everyone to go down. But like that is the only way I could imagine, like if you're a junior and having to apply for a job where they expect you as a junior to have 3-4 years of experience is having done, for example, open source work, because that comes with some skills that you can demonstrate that I can work in a team, like I've committed to, like GitHub, like my code is in production, that sort of thing. So yeah, it is really hard advice to hear, I know, but
yeah. Sorry, I was struggling to go to the video. What I was noticing, because I noticed a change of market because I started looking for job in September last year. I wasn't feeling ready to start as a front end, even if I was, and I'm really how can I say. I regret that I didn't apply 1 year ago. But anyway, I noticed that the request, the offer of jobs for junior is very reduced because of the crisis where we're having now, because it's really hard to integrate someone who is remote. And if you don't find also so you have junior roles with experience, or you have junior roles for front end. I'm talking so where the knowledge required is not really level. I had one of my latest experiences that my level was good for the role, but in the end they preferred to someone who was more experienced, because that's what we are facing right now in this period. And this is what I was, my question was, how can we stand out, especially if we come from a different path and we are aged. So in a certain way, I'm 40, I'm not considered as a junior. In another market, I'm not considered as a junior because of my age. I applied also for apprenticeship because the government was pushing this, a lot of company, and there were a lot of company that opened apprenticeship for people. But in the end, I realized that they were addressing to 18, 29, maximum 30. So I see a lot of initiative for young people, and this is great, amazing. Don't take me wrong about that, because the youth is our future. But we still have a huge part of people that are still capable to be productive, to be integrated in the market, but they are completely ignored for certain, because they are more expensive by law. This is by law. This is by law. You can propose a 20-year-old a contract that you cannot propose someone who's 40 because the age. So this is what.
Where are you based, Paula? Sorry.
I'm in London.
And that's the law. Okay. Oh, for the apprenticeship. Sorry.
Yes, I'm talking.
Okay. Because I was like, I'm pretty sure for jobs.
Yes. They have different levels, and that's why. But yeah, and another thing is that what I think is that because bootcamp give a full start, so I think the roles from real junior became full start roles, and I don't know how many people we can reject it. Sorry, I was reading Janet reply. You can reject. You can get rejected as another person due to expectation of salary. I was advised to say on a minimum wage. Yeah, but the point is that if I'm applying for a shown at 25k, 30k, I expect to be paid that amount independently of my age. So an apprenticeship usually is between 23, 28. Usually, this is what I saw.
Yeah.
I mean, there are exceptions, but that was interesting to understand how you stand out in a situation like this. I don't know how many people are in a similar situation.
I mean, I don't know if I think like in your case, like probably the only way, well, not the only way, like the way I would stand out is to say, like, somehow bring in, like, because you had a whole other career, I assume, you know what I mean? Like, you've probably been like wildly successful in a different industry and like have things that you did there that like are achievements.
Yes.
And like try to bring those and tie them back in, like say, you know, if you choose me over like this 22-year-old, like I have these very like concrete skills in a workforce. Like this is how I could contribute besides as someone who's just out of college or just like, you know, done like high school and then a boot camp. Or I think that's basically the only way, because yeah, obviously like purely on technical skills, it will probably be harder to stand out. And I mean, that is true for even like a senior developer, like, you know, like on purely on skills, like very few developers are like extremely good at one thing where like they really stand out from the fold, where they're just like above everyone, like they are the best at this thing. That like people kind of tend to have similar like technical, like at a certain level. So the only way really to stand out is by, you know, like really with those achievements, like how did you make the team better, like the product better? You know, like at the end of the day, what we build is for people, for users. Like, how did you contribute to the wider company? You know, and not just pure. And I think for a junior developer, like if you have like experience from your previous career that could help that tech company in other ways than say just someone who writes code, like that could be a way to really kind of stand out and say, I can come into a technical role, but I bring this perspective where like I know how to like do user interviews, and like that would be a very like useful skill to have. And like, you know, so I think like that, I don't know if anyone like agrees or disagrees with me, but I think that's pretty much like in your circumstance what I see you could do to kind of stand out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, like trying to bring that out. But I think it can also be hard because some of that stuff is not, it's not necessarily as obvious and as easy to bring out. I guess if you, once you get to sort of interview stages, the thing that often stands out for candidates for me is the ones who ask questions. The more questions, generally the better, because most of the candidates ask maybe one or two questions, but like if you ask more questions, it shows the more interest in the job and more interest about what you want, knowing more about what you want out of a job.
Yeah, the problem is getting to the stage where you can even ask questions of someone, like like, you know, like, so I've done so many, like maybe for every 10 application I do, I get to talk to one person. So it's like even just getting into like the door, like someone actually emailing the email on your resume is, I find, a huge challenge for me. So, and I'm an experienced developer, like I'm not looking for my first job. So yeah, so I think definitely extending out and that would be my advice. But I don't know if anyone has any other perspectives or on that.
Just want to say that we're slightly over time, I think.
Yeah, I think we're probably.
Yes, we are, I think.
Did anyone have a last question?
Yeah. Okay. I've got a quick last one. 2-page CVs versus 1-page CVs.
I think it depends on your experience. If you have experience, you cannot stand in one. My CV, I cannot put in one page because I have a completely different career, and in my CV I integrate some because I have no experience with a company, so I integrate my portfolio in my CV, not such as links, description of what is in the project, those kind of information.
Actually, portfolios.
Yes, and everything that can brings people to see what I can do. So the first page is this basically, and the second page is my real work experience.
I would say like 2 pages is fine, just but they need to be. I think it was touched on earlier. Just make it clean and clear.
Yeah,
that's the key thing.
I would say if this is your first one and you haven't had like a whole career in a different field, like try to keep it 1 page, and maybe after maybe once you're kind of like hitting the you're like I just switched my CV from 1 page to 2 page, and now I'm like probably like closer to having 10 years under my belt than than to maybe having 1 or 2 years. So I think if you're junior probably, and again, you didn't have like a whole very extensive different career, keep it to 1 page. And once you get to like an experience of maybe like 3-4 jobs and you're like, I absolutely cannot like fit it, then 2 pages is fine. I probably wouldn't go more than 3 though, even if you have like lots of experience, because it's just honestly no one's gonna read it. Like no one is gonna look at it.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of CVs which have been like, I had one that was 5 or 6 pages recently. It's just, it was also not laid out very well, so I gave up. But yeah, 2 I think is fine. Like as long as it's clear, and if the first page is the most important, so making sure it's clear on the first page, and the second page can just be the follow-up stuff. So it's more than 2. Don't do that. That's where you're going to have the problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Debbie, did you have a question?
No, I don't think so. I'm just listening. I joined a bit late, sorry. I'm just listening in.
There's some really good links posted in the chat. Might be worth checking those out as well.
Okay, thanks.
You just joined. I think this session should be over now, I guess. I think the lightning talks
have started.
Will be opening. They've already started.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it.
Oh, they're about to.
Okay.